Who was hitting him? Was it her? Was it him? Was he out of his clothes? Was he?
He was screaming since he couldn't have had clothes on the Harvey family and was being hit by either her or him. As more startling information about how Steve Harvey's wife, Marjorie, manipulated him and turned him against his biological children comes to light, the feud is becoming more and more ugly by the day. That child will undoubtedly have a wonderful relationship with them, but I fail to understand how Marjorie in particular can claim to be a mother to her own children. In the meantime, Steve's other biological children have spoken out about feeling left out, and insiders close to the family claim that Marjorie forced Steve to choose her and her children over his own flesh and blood. So what's the real story about Marjorie Harvey? Did she really mistreat Steve's biological children? Steve's ex-wife Mary revealed that their son Winton was physically abused by their father in a brutal manner, and Marjorie did nothing to stop this. Let's go serious. How can you humiliate a young man like that when he is entering manhood by stripping him down to that extent and then beating him until he bleeds? Mrs. Steve Harvey Marjorie recently addressed the widely circulated suspicions that she cheated on Steve, but her statement had little effect in putting an end to the discussion of the chaotic Harvey family drama. I don't typically stop to address all the silliness and lies that have been made about my husband and me, but Marjorie took to Instagram to address the claims and provided an article on how to deal being lied about. Even though Marjorie wrote that to whom much is given, much is required, many of her fans continued to stand by her on social media, claiming that even if the cheating rumors are false, it doesn't change the fact that Marjorie was already exposed by Steve's ex-wife for manipulating Steve and turning him against his kids. Steve first made the promise to Marjorie at a comedy club in 1990. He told her straight away that he would marry her one day, but I'm not kidding. The first thing he ever said to her was, "I don't know who you are, but I'm gonna marry you one day." This may sound romantic, but it only applies if you ignore the fact that Steve was already married to Marcia when he made this promise. Nevertheless, Marjorie wasn't interested in Steve back then because he was still a struggling comic, so she went on to date and marry two dealers while Steve and Marcia were married in 1980. Afterwards, Marcia claimed that Steve had cheated on her with several women and had abandoned her when she was expecting Broderick. According to Radar Online, in 1995, after Marcia filed for divorce, she took Steve to court and forced him to pay alimony and child support. However, a year or so later, Marcia filed a complaint, claiming that she had already received no money. At that point, Stephen had already begun living with Mary Shackelford, who would later become his second wife. It was Mary who ultimately revealed to the public the truth about Steve's third wife, Marjorie, and how she had ruined their relationship by forcing Steve to accept her children from two prior marriages to drug dealers Jim Townsend and Darnell Woods. Steve later formally adopted all three of Marjorie's children, daughter Lori with Darnell, son Jason, and daughter Morgan with Jim. Jim Townsend and Marjorie began dating in the mid-1990s. According to reports, Marjorie became involved in Jim's illegal activities, earning the nickname Lady Heroin. Jim ended up serving 26 years in prison, but Marjorie was able to evade prosecution. After Jim was locked up, Marjorie filed for divorce and moved on with another dealer, Darnell Wood. Darnell was the father of Marjorie's third child, Lori, and the two of them were married in 2000, around the time that the FBI began to look into Darnell's smuggling activities. Shortly after the wedding, Marjorie got back in touch with Steve, who had already established himself in the business, so she decided to give him another chance. However, at that point, she discovered that Steve was still married to Mary, with whom he had a son named Winton, so she reportedly began hatching plots to get him to divorce Mary and accept her children Morgan. Steve eventually married Marjorie in 2007 and married her, but not before adopting her 3 children. Lori and Jason Mary also accused Steve of being unfaithful, saying that it was unsettling how quickly he moved from her to Marjorie. What's even more disturbing, according to Mary, is that Steve took her son Winton and turned him against her. Steve didn't care that Mary supported him during his rise to prominence and helped him launch several businesses. As soon as Marjorie entered the picture, he dropped Mary, kicked her out of their home, and left her with nothing. Steve turned my kid against me, took my Winton from me, and had me evicted from our home. He did this by using his wealth and celebrity status to influence the judicial system and obtain custody of Winton. He manipulated the courts everything against me, but that's not even the worst part. In another recent interview, Mary claimed that Steve treated Winton like a dog and often inflicted severe physical punishment on him, according to Mary. When Winton was just 10 years old, Steve attacked him so badly, just because Winton lied about doing his homework. This incident happened after Winton had already started living with Steve and Marjorie, and Mary said she was shocked when she saw Winton's injuries, and she wasn't sure whether Marjorie also played a part in the incident. And I'm gonna say attack that wasn't a chastisement. He was attacked. Because what I think about, was he scared who was hitting him, was it? Or was it him? Was he out of his clothes? Was he screaming? Because he couldn't have had clothes on for his back to get cut up like that. Mary said that to this day she can't forgive herself for not being there to protect her son. And she still thinks about Winton calling for her to protect him. And all I kept thinking to myself was that I was not there to stop that from happening to him. Was he thinking about me? Was he calling to me in his head? The authorities were notified about the incident, and according to a police report, Winston told cops that he had trouble using the bathroom 4 days after what Steve did to him. However, Steve reportedly again used his influence to escape legal consequences, and the case was closed without further investigation. Now this really makes you wonder, how could Marjorie watch Steve do this to his own son when he was just 10? I know that as a mother, if I was ever in a position to be in charge of someone else's child, I would definitely make sure they had a great relationship with that child. But I just don't see how Marjorie in particular can call herself a mother to her own children. Additionally, reports have surfaced recently indicating that Steve's 3 biological children, Brandy, Carly, and Winton, always felt neglected, while Steve focused all of his attention on Marjorie's, especially her golden child. According to Mary, this is because Marjorie is just as cold and heartless as Steve, and it was she who turned Winton against her. There is a lot of tension behind closed doors because Marjorie and Steve give all of their attention to Lori while ignoring the other kids, according to the insider, who was recently quoted by Lori and an insider close to the Harveys on Radar Online. The insider claims that the Harvey household is nowhere near as perfect as they like to portray themselves. The blended Harvey clan fans are dividing over the disturbing details of how Steve and Marjorie mistreated Steve's biological children. They believe that this behavior is far worse than that of any cheating groomers, and many are hoping that these two will face consequences. Marjorie is the boss of the Harvey household. I'm happy that everything is finally coming to light. A fan commented that Marjorie and her kids look to be the gorgeous family that Steve had always dreamed of having. Steve spoke with many people when he was rising to fame. Another follower said, Marjorie has a dark past, and she doesn't want nobody to know that karma is coming for both of them. Steve Harvey is someone I detest. I hope that Marjorie Sinister behind takes everything from him, gets divorced from him, leaves him broke as his karma, and prevents him from getting any more TV gigs. However, let's hear what you think about how Steve and Marjorie handled Steve's biological children. Do you think Marjorie had any influence on Steve's decision to turn against his flesh and blood? Please leave a comment below and don't miss this next foreign video.